This is Algebra 2, Lesson 2.2, Slope and Rate of Change. Again, another review from Algebra 1, finding slopes of lines, use them in real-life problems, beginning on page 75 in the text. A few definitions to begin. What is a slope? Here's the official definition. It's a ratio of vertical change to horizontal change. Most of the time, people refer to this as rise over run, but can't remember what that is, rise over run. Rise is what an elevator does. It either goes up or down, positive, it's going up, negative, it's going down, over, it goes left or right. Negative, it's going left, positive, it's going right. Parallel lines are two lines in the same plane that do not intersect. Now, most people understand what parallel lines are. They're lines that will never cross each other. There's another set of lines called skew lines that'll never cross each other, but they could look like this on a drawing from straight ahead. These lines will never cross each other, but because they're in two separate planes. But for right now, parallel lines are what you've always thought of them. In geometry, you learn to represent parallel lines like that. That's showing that they'll never cross each other. Parallel lines have the same slope. Today we're talking about slope. They have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are two lines that when they cross each other, they form a right. It says to form a right angle. You know that when the two lines cross each other, it doesn't just form one right angle, because if you have one right angle, the complement of that one is this one right here. That one's 90. And the same thing, this is vertical angle would be 90. So with this one, it makes four 90-degree angles. Parallel lines had the same slope. Perpendicular lines slopes are what's called negative reciprocals of each other. All that means is the opposite sign, and then you flip it. So if one slope was 1/2, its perpendicular line slope would be flipped. That would be 2 over 1. And since this one was positive, this would be negative. So the first slope would be 1/2. The second slope would be -2 when you're talking about them. Here's how you find the slope of a line. It's y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Most people, after you do this enough, you remember this with no problem, and you can label it, and you can do it. Or you could just simply go from one to the other. Remember, though, if you're going to call one, like if you go this direction, y sub 2 minus y sub 1, you can't go this direction with your x's. That'll break it if you do it that way. You have to go this direction again. So if you're going y sub 2 minus y sub 1, or the change of y, that's why it says minus, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, the change of x. Here's example number 1, finding the slope. It says find the slope between -2, 0 and 1, 2. So y sub 2 is this value. 2 minus y sub 1 is 0. 2 minus 0, you can see that's what's written right here. Over x sub 2 is 1 minus x sub 2 is -2, minus a -2. That's why we did all of that on the bell work today. Minus a -2 is what we have right here. 1 minus a -2 means 1 plus a +2. So 1 plus 2 is going to be 3. 2 minus 0 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. So if you graph those two lines on this picture here, from -2, 0, which was here, to 1 +2 there, you can count the slope. You can see it goes up 2, and it goes to the right 3 times. Up 2 this way, and to the right 1, 2, 3 times that way. Okay, take about 30 seconds, find the slope of the line passing through these 2 points. Okay, you can do it the long way, or you can do it the short way without having to graph it. Both of them would work. Remember, the slope formula is the change of y, so y sub 2 minus y sub 1, the difference of the two means to subtract, over the change of x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if you labeled it, you know that x comes before y, so xy, xy, and just call this one sub 1 and this one sub 2. This is just a long way to do it. Most people don't have to do it this way at you guys' level. Y sub 2 is this number right here, -1, minus y sub 1 is that number there, -4, minus a negative. There we go right there. X sub 2's value is negative, I'm sorry, X sub 2's value is this one here. Make sure you go to the same one again. Otherwise, don't do like I just tried to do. You'll mess it up. 3 minus X sub 1's value is negative 2. Again, minus a negative. So we have negative 1 plus 4 is going to be positive 3. And 3 plus 2 is going to be 5. Should have 3/5 for the slope. Yeah. Okay, question was asked, do you always put minus? You're talking about the difference of how two things change. When you're talking about the difference of things, is subtract. Okay, you change from one to the other. How much do they change from one to the next one? Okay, classifications of lines by slope. A line with a positive slope rises from left to right. Think about going up a ramp. Okay, that means, remember, m is the variable that represents slope most of the time. M is greater than 0. Okay. If it has a negative slope, means it's going downhill. Think of a ramp going down, falling from left to right. It is less than 0. This is just showing a negative value. A line with a slope of 0 is horizontal. Its slope value is 0. That's a horizontal line. Think of the horizon going across. And then a line with an undefined slope is one that goes straight up and down. People get those two confused a lot. A student taught me this a long time ago. You can write the word 0 with 0 slope, and you can write an N for no slope for the one that has no slope or an undefined version. Okay. And here, pictures to show what I just showed just now. Positive slope, it's a ramp going up. Negative slope, the ramp's going down. 0 slope, it's a horizontal line. And undefined slope is a vertical line. It's example number 2, classifying lines using slope. Without graphing, tell whether the line through the given point rises, falls, horizontal, or is vertical. Okay? First thing, you have two values that are the same, 3 and 3. When you subtract 3 minus 3, remember y is going to be on top. You're going to get 0. 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. So it's a horizontal line. For the other one, it's going to be y sub 2 minus y sub 1. So 0 minus 2 is going to be negative 2 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. 3 minus a negative means 3 plus a positive. 3 plus 2 is 5. So you have a negative value right there. You can tell, since it's a negative value, it's going to fall from left to right since it's negative. So that's a ramp that's going downhill. It's going to fall. Negative means it falls. Okay, take about 30 seconds to determine whether these rise, fall, or horizontal or vertical. Okay, went a little bit longer than 30 seconds right there. Just check your y, your change of y. Remember, change means what's the difference. So subtract them. 5 minus 3 is going to be 2 over your change of x. 1 minus a negative 2 means 1 plus 2, which is going to be 3. This is a positive value right here. That one right there is rising. It's going up since it's positive. The one at the bottom, you're looking at the change of y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Negative 2 plus a positive 2 is going to be 0. Notice those values were the same. When you change, go from one to the next, see how they change. 3 minus minus 1 means 3 minus 1, which is 2. 0 divided by anything is a 0 slope. That is a horizontal line. Another way for you to remember it, it says horizontal and 0 both have a z in it. Maybe that's one way you can remember it. They both have a z. 0 slope, horizontal. Tell which line is steeper, line 1 or line 2. Remember, steeper does not mean the greater value. It means how much, think about going up the ramp or down the ramp. Which one is going to be steeper? It could be both positive or it could be negative. So think of its absolute value. 5 minus 0 is going to be 5. 0 minus a negative 1 is plus 1. So that first line slope is going to be 5, and that's what we have there. The other one, 7 minus 4 is 3. 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. The absolute values of them, 5 is greater than 3. So the first line, see that slope of line sub 1 is greater than the slope of line sub 2. They both have positive slopes. Again, had one of those been negative, let's say, for example, this one was negative 5. Okay, it wasn't, but if it would have been, it would still be steeper. Even though 3 is a greater value than negative 5, negative 5 changes more rapidly than 3. Okay, take about a minute, determine which one of these is the steeper line. Okay, for this one right here, compare your slopes. Y sub 2 minus Y sub 1. 2 minus a negative 4 means 2 plus 4. That's going to be 6. 5 minus 1 is going to be 4. So your first slope is 6 over 4. We know that that simplifies. 2 goes into both of them. 3 over 2 is the same thing. You do the same thing to the bottom one. Negative 2 minus a negative 5 means negative 2 plus 5, which is going to be a positive 3. 1 minus a negative 2 means 1 plus 2 is going to be 3. 3 over 3 simplifies to 1. So compare these two numbers, 3 over 2 or 1. Which one of them has a greater value? 3 over 2 is 1.5. That's 50% more than 1. So therefore, line 1 had a greater slope. Or line 1 is a steeper line. Here's our first checkpoint. It says find the slope of these two. Your change of y over your change of x. So negative 4 minus 1. Notice I might have did it a little different than y'all did. If you used y sub 2 first, then you went 1 minus the negative 4. Watch how it's going to come out to be the same. Negative 4 minus 1 is going to be negative 5 over 2 minus a negative 5. That means plus 5. So 2 plus 5 is going to be 7. You probably got the same negative 5 over 7 if you went the other way. Number 2 says without graphing, tell whether it rises, falls, horizontal, or vertical. Well, the change of y, here we go, 3 minus a negative 5. 3 plus 5 is going to be 8 over 0 minus 5, negative 5. Right there, we can tell by looking at that slope, it is a negative value. Negative value slopes do that. Therefore, it is falling. False. There you go. Which one is steeper? Which one has a higher absolute value for its slope? Okay, well, the first one, 3 minus 1 is going to be 2. 0 minus a negative 5, 0 plus 5 is 5. So there's the first one, 2 over 5. 9 minus 7 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. 2 over 5 or 2 over 3. Okay, well, you got to determine. This is a little harder for some people. You might want to change both of there, like if you have 2 over 5 and 2 over 3. Might want to change them both into the same denominators where you can see them a little bit easier. It's not necessary if you understand that 2/3 is greater already. But 15 is the number they both go into. 5 times 3 is 15, so 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 5 is 15, so 2 times 5 is 10. So you can see by looking at them there, that's just an even comparison, putting them both over the number 15. 2 over 3 is a bigger value than 2 over 5. Therefore, line 2 is steeper. Slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines have the same slope. They rise and run the same value. So the slope of line 1, m of 1, is equal to m of 2. Perpendicular lines have a negative reciprocal of each other. They form right angles in the middle. Again, all negative reciprocal means is change it and flip it. That's just a fancy phrase that means change it and flip it. Take the negative value and 1 over the slope of m sub 1. I have a couple examples that make a little bit better sense. Negative reciprocals, change it and flip it. Okay, classifying these as parallel or perpendicular lines. So it says tell whether lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither one. It could be neither one. So find the slopes of line 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So 3 over negative 1. There's line 1. Line 2. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. 0 minus a negative 2 means plus 2. That's positive 2. So you have, looking at your slopes, one of them was negative 3. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Those have the exact same slope. Lines that have the exact same slope are parallel lines. Okay, here's the other part about them being parallel. If they are different lines, okay, line 1, if you have to look at this and picture this mentally, passes through point 1, and through point 0, 4. So it's going to go through those 2 points. The other one passes through negative 2, positive 3. So here, and 0, negative 3. Here. They're different lines. Had they been the exact same line, then it would be an indefinite, an infinite amount of lines or of points they shared in common. Here's B, determining if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. 3 minus a negative 1 means 3 plus 1, that's 4. 2 minus a negative 1, 2 plus 1 is 3. So 4 over 3 is the slope of your first line. 2 minus a negative 3 means 2 plus 3, that's going to be 5. Okay. Now, when you're looking at this right here right away, you might say, okay, well, it's not 3 or 4, so it's going to be neither one. But it may be of a greater value, so just go through with the rest of the problem to make sure that it's not a simplified version. So negative 3 minus 4 is going to be negative 7. So 5 over negative 7. Neither one of these are going to simplify to become the numbers 3 and 4. Since it's not the negative reciprocal, since it's not the same numbers, just flipped with one of them positive and one's negative, it's neither one. It's neither parallel nor perpendicular. Okay, tell whether these, take about a minute, determine if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither one. Okay, let's see what our slopes are. -2 minus a -2 means -2 plus 2. That's 0 over 3 minus 1 is going to be 2. So your first slope is 0. The slope of the second line, 4 minus 4, is going to be 0 again. That looks familiar. 0 minus a -5 means 0 plus 5. So they both of the slopes are 0. Those are parallel lines. They're parallel horizontal lines. For the other two, 1 minus a -2 means 1 plus 2, which is 3. 4 minus a -2 means 4 plus 2, which is 6. So we have 3 over 6. We know that that simplifies to 1/2. And we can do the same thing with these. 5 minus a -3 means 5 plus 3, which is 8. And 1 minus a -3 means 1 plus 3, which is 4. Okay, so we have 1/2, and 8 over 4 simplifies to 2 over 1. So now we have 1/2, and we have 2 over 1. When we compare these two slopes, they're almost perpendicular lines. But one of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. So therefore, B is neither perpendicular nor parallel.